Today, we're deconstructing SICK, a company that's become absolutely pivotal in the global semiconductor landscape. Let's get right into it.
All right, let's start with the conclusion first, our core findings. Here's what you need to know. First, think of SICL as a strategic national asset, really born out of geopolitical necessity. Second, it's not just talk. They've shown some real substantive breakthroughs in some very tough bottleneck technologies. Third, they're using this group army ecosystem model, which is all about achieving supply chain autonomy. And finally, because of all this, its path forward is a critical indicator of this technological bifurcation we're seeing play out globally.
So to really get a handle on SICL, you first have to understand the world it was born into. The company's very existence is a direct result of a major shift in the geopolitical landscape.
You see, what happened is that U.S. export controls on advanced computing and semiconductors, well, they had an unintended consequence. They essentially created a protected, high-demand market right inside China. This put domestic chip makers in a position where they were forced, really, to aggressively look for local suppliers. It became all about de-risking their own operations.
And just how big is that opportunity? Well, look at this number. We're talking about a market for semiconductor equipment in China that hit almost $50 billion in 2024. That makes it the largest in the world. And that entire figure, that's the massive captive domestic demand that a company like SICL can tap into.
Okay, so that's the market context. Now let's pivot to the tech. What's actually in their arsenal? We need to look at the tangible progress they've shown because that's what really underpins their whole strategic value.
All right, first up is a major breakthrough in a field called test and measurement. And the tool we're talking about is an oscilloscope. Now, if you're not familiar, this is an absolutely fundamental piece of equipment. For any engineer working on advanced electronics, think AI chips, 6G tech, you name it, the oscilloscope is their eyes. It's what lets them literally see and analyze the high-speed electrical signals that make everything work.
So, here's the big news. A subsidiary of SICL, a company called Longsight, just unveiled a 90 gigahertz oscilloscope. Now, why does that matter? It's a huge deal because it directly breaks through a key technology blockade. For a long time, Western regulations restricted exports of any oscilloscope above 60 gigahertz to China, so hitting 90 is a major statement. And if you look at this comparison table, you can see just how significant this is. We're putting Longsight specs right up against the global heavyweights, Keysight, Tektronix, Teledyne Lakroy. And what you see is that its 90 gigahertz bandwidth and 200 gigasamples per second rate aren't just good, they're highly competitive. This isn't a second-rate substitute. It positions this device squarely in the top tier of the global market.
Okay, so that's the hardware side for testing. But just as critical, if not more so, is the progress they're reporting in software, specifically EDA, or electronic design automation. You can think of EDA as the digital architect for every single modern chip. There's a reason it's called the mother of chip design. The entire semiconductor industry is literally built on this software. And another SICL subsidiary, Kyungsfeng, has rolled out its own EDA suite, and the claims are pretty bold. They're talking fully independent intellectual property, a 30% performance bump over industry benchmarks, and cutting hardware development time by 40%. Now, of course, these numbers need to be independently verified, but the fact that they're reporting over 20,000 active engineer users, that tells you it's already solving a real problem for a significant part of the domestic design industry.
So, you have these tech breakthroughs, right? But it's crucial to understand they aren't just isolated wins. They're all part of a much bigger corporate strategy, a strategy that's explicitly designed as a countermeasure to the way the market works today.
And this quote from an industry veteran just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly frames the problem they're trying to solve. You see, the real challenge for domestic equipment suppliers was never just about making one single high-performing tool. The real trick is trying to get that one tool into a production line that's already completely locked in, where foreign equipment has created a systemic monopoly over decades of working together seamlessly.
So what's SICL's solution to this systemic monopoly? They call it group army warfare. And the idea is pretty clever. Instead of trying to sell just one piece of equipment, they're offering the whole shebang, a complete, pre-integrated, all-domestic ecosystem. So a customer can design their chip with Kyungsfeng software, then make it on a line of SICL's manufacturing tools, and finally test and verify it with Longsight's instruments. The whole point is to break that monopoly from the inside out by offering a full-stack alternative.
And has the strategy worked? Well, the market seems to think so. Just look at this number, an order book of over 10 billion RMB. And here's the critical part. Those orders are coming from China's biggest chip makers, companies like SMIC and YMTC. And who are they?
They are the exact companies that are most affected by export controls and have the biggest incentive to buy into a system like this.
Okay, so that's the bull case. But for any credible analysis, we have to look at the other side of the coin. We have to be objective about the really significant gaps that still exist, not just for SICL, but for the entire industry. Because let's be clear, no one company can solve this entire puzzle by itself.
So, we've seen the breakthroughs in design software and in test equipment. But what's the Achilles heel? What is the single biggest missing piece in China's entire semiconductor ecosystem?
The answer, in one word, is lithography. The lithography machine is, without a doubt, the crown jewel of chip manufacturing. It is the single most complex, most expensive piece of equipment in the entire factory. And its precision is everything. It's what determines whether you're making a 28-nanometer chip or a 5-nanometer chip.
And this is the bottom line. High-end lithography is still the #1 bottleneck. And I want to be really clear here. This isn't just an SICL problem. This is a systemic, industry-wide risk for China. The domestic industry is still almost totally dependent on imports from one company, the Dutch firm ASML, for this absolutely critical step.
Now, lithography is the big one, but a full risk assessment has to go deeper. You've got the relentless pace of Moore's Law, which means your R&D has to be incredibly fast just to keep up. Then there's the operational challenge. Going from a startup to a massive industrial company is incredibly difficult and full of execution risk. And of course, you can't ignore the geopolitical chessboard. That can mean direct sanctions on ASML, or on the flip side, what if US-China trade tensions suddenly eased? That could actually weaken its protected market advantage.
Okay, so let's pull all of this together. Let's synthesize these technological, strategic, and risk factors into a financial picture and think about what this all signals for the broader market.
In its latest funding round, SICL landed a pre-money valuation of 65 billion RMB. To put that in perspective, that's roughly $9 billion US.
Now, a number that big requires some context. When you compare it to its international peers, it seems to have what we might call a clear policy premium baked in. What does that mean? It means the market isn't just valuing the company on its tech or its profits. It's also pricing in its protected market status, the predictability of that domestic demand, and its strategic importance to the nation. All of those factors make its revenue seem a lot less cyclical and less exposed to normal commercial risks.
And the emergence of a giant like SICK doesn't just happen in isolation. It's creating a major ripple effect across China's domestic A-share market. In fact, a whole new investment theme has popped up, the SICL concept, which is basically a basket of its key suppliers. And as you can see here, you have companies that make high-purity process systems, or core vacuum parts, or other manufacturing equipment. Their fortunes are now directly linked to SICL's trajectory. So, this all brings us to the final, central question that this whole case raises. Is this integrated group army model that SICL is building, is this the new blueprint for how a nation achieves technological sovereignty in an increasingly fragmented world? Or is it a massively expensive, capital-intensive detour from the efficiencies we've all come to know from the globalized supply chain? There's no easy answer, but one thing is for sure. The path SICL takes from here will be a key bellwether for the future of our bifurcating global technology landscape.